stories to share. Before I start, just because we do have a full crowd and it seems like we can't use that front door, we're not using the front door, but if there were an emergency, this is the main exit.
I'm out of here.
Howard will be safe. And there are two exits on your side, and you could go out the front door. It's just that there's some 2x4s and stuff, so you'd have to be a little bit careful. My name is Sean Driscoll. I'm on the board here at the Civic Center, and I'll be the moderator tonight. This is the 6th talk in the 5th season of Stories to Share. The Civic Center is able to put on this program thanks to the generous donations of individuals, and thanks to our sponsors, our corporate sponsors. They are Savings Bank of Walpole, Bell Tates, and the Monadnock Ledger Transcript. We're very appreciative of their support. What we'll do is that I'll introduce Howard. He gets the hour. We're starting late, so you get to go to 6:05. And
Got it.
I'll be over there. But if you don't take all the time, maybe we have time for questions at the end. If not, we'll stop right at 6:05. Following the talk, there's a reception in the conference room, graciously provided by Nancy Beltate and Jean Duval. And we hope you'll stay after to talk to people and ask questions. We also tonight have a special thing happening that the Toadstool Bookstore is supposed to be here, and they're going to set up right in our fire exit, but that's okay. And they're going to be selling books afterwards, so we're very appreciative that our local independent bookstore is going to come out and sell Howard's books. When I moved to Jaffrey in the 90s, my father said to me, if you're going to live up here, you should really read Howard Mansfield's books. And my dad didn't read books, he read newspapers. So I took it, when he said you should read a book, carried some weight. So I followed his directions. My understanding of where I live and where I work has been profoundly influenced by Howard Mansfield. When I am such a fan of his work that I often take his ideas as my own. So when I say to people, Henry David Thoreau is the preeminent New England scold, I'm actually channeling some kind of hash of something that I heard Howard say or I read in one of his books. I certainly have not read enough Thoreau in my life to actually have that opinion. I talk about the Phoenix Mill in Peterborough or the Stone Arch Bridges in Hillsborough as if I know what I'm talking about. I only know what I know because I've read Howard's books. But in doing that, I've realized that, I wanted to make like an, which is that simply that like long before there were AI algorithms stealing Howard's intellectual property, I was doing the same thing. I was making slop out of Howard Mansfield's work. I knew I had that somewhere. But in getting ready for tonight, I reread some of my favorite things by Howard. And when I was rereading them, I realized that I had sort of done an additional disservice, which is that I realized that over time, I had twisted my memory of his essays to buttress my own ideas, like my own take on things. And in rereading his work, I really realized what a mistake that was and what a disservice it was to what he writes, because his writing asks us questions, right? It prods us to think about why we think we know what we know and why we don't know what we don't know. And so it's only because you're a writer. I wanted to get the words right, and so I've blown it. So really the thing is that Howard's works are the antithesis of the kind of history that you can turn into a cudgel to bash other people over the head with. And so while I'm really excited that he has a new book out called Invisible Monuments, Tribute, Memory, and the Summoning of the Past, and that's going to come out this fall, so I'm very excited to read the new work, but I'm also really excited with this discovery I have to reread his old work and the things that I've read already. because they are challenging, they are thought-provoking, and they are art of the highest order. And so I hope you'll join me. We are so lucky to have him both here tonight and as a writer in the Monadnock region. And so I hope you'll join me in giving him a warm Civic Center help.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. It's really wonderful to see everybody here tonight. I'm going to start right in. Let's go this way. How's that? That's a very expensive graphic. I'm a flatlander, born on some of the flattest land on the East Coast, on Long Island, in a Cold War suburb. It's me and Dad at the department store. They were showing off the newest thing, Polaroid. Get your picture in an instant. Off to college at Syracuse. That's college graduation. Where, as a managing editor at our independent, student-run college newspaper, the Daily Orange, we hired this woman. We did not hire the Bears. The Bears were years off. Nor did we hire the tarantula. That too was years off. Or the octopus. Or all the other animals. And I'll stop there, though we could be at this all night. But Cy did come in like she was dressed for a production of Godspell. It was the 1970s. If you were alive then, there's a photo of you dressed in something regrettable. Just the worst decade for clothes. If you doubt that, see what Van Morrison is wearing in that movie about the end of the band. He looks like a bowling ball in a fishnet. A lot of life happened, and we married. You see, George, you really had a wonderful life. If there's time later, we can discuss the economic underpinnings of the Bailey savings and loan, which are really wonky. Oops, sorry. Before we married, we moved to New Hampshire in 1984. A good friend who had worked at the Monadnock Ledger told us that it was a good, cheap place to live. Like Faulkner said of the novel, she was wrong about the facts, but right about the truth. We arrived in the midst of an immense boom. 1% unemployment, magazine stories touting the miracle, and beating the drum for the second fastest growing state east of the Mississippi River, and saying New Hampshire was the best place to live in the whole damn nation. It was hard to find a place to rent. We found a sweet, converted carriage house on a main street. Cy then took off for the outback, studying emus for 6 months, living in a tent. I did not do that. I moved us in. The very first evening in New Hampshire, I was walking around town. The Historical Society was open. It was only open a few hours each summer. It was in an old one-room schoolhouse. I went in, it was musty, cool, a jumble shop of American history. The sweet smell of decay, history hurrying towards dust. I looked at the items on the shelves. The labels were handwritten in perfect faded Palmer penmanship, just perfect. Here was hardtack that was sent home from the Civil War with a little bug next to it that had tasted it. A drum that may have been used in the Revolution. The Parson's sermon on hearing of the death of George Washington. It begins in a sure hand. Know thee not that there is a prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel. I'd like to hear the rest of that. And there was a clump of once golden braid. The handwritten label said, "This tassel formed a part of the decorations of the funeral car which carried the remains of the late Abraham Lincoln from Washington to Springfield, April 1865. The late President Lincoln. I snapped to attention. Here was a glimpse of a community in the act of remembering. Here was a community creating its history, choosing the stories it would tell about itself, choosing its ancestors, marking out monuments and holidays, choosing who gets to enter the memory house. I walked out into the summer twilight just a little bit changed. I remember standing on Main Street. I could hear children playing up at the schoolyard. 2 doors down, the select board was heading into a meeting. And I stood there thinking, the late President Lincoln, just where was I? I mean, could I still send a condolence card? Memory is a defining characteristic of New England. I had studied American history in college, but I did not move to New Hampshire to write about it. At the time, I was writing for trendy New York City architecture magazines whose offices were in downtown lofts. The art directors were in a swoon over Russian constructivist art. And sometimes they'd take your copy and just tilt it all over 15 degrees. I didn't know it that first night, but that was the start of a 40-year-long research project, and thus far. I kept looking around at town meetings and Franklin Pierce and Mount Monadnock, and several years later published my first New Hampshire book, In the Memory House. It's a book that also takes in the lost West End of Boston, the fallen landscape of tall trees, Johnny Appleseed, Jack Kerouac, Thoreau and the Ice King, a remarkable Peterborough pharmacist, and the many ways we have come to live in modern times. I'm going to read a little from the Memory House. This is a chapter about the loss of elm-shaded towns and cities, the passing of tall tree America. That's West Street in Keene, not like it is today. It's also West Street. They left behind great names: the Divine Elm, the Justice Elm, the Pride of the State, the Green Tree. In their dappled shade, countless towns found repose. Places like Elmhurst, Illinois, Elm Grove, Wisconsin, and New Haven, City of Elms. Many were the American cities that claimed that title. Elms were the landscape of America. The tall trees have vanished, but once they were the pride of the community. Maples, oaks, elms, and pines grew 100 to 200 feet tall or more, taller than most church steeples. There was scarcely a town that didn't believe it had the tallest elm, the oldest oak, the most beautiful chestnuts, the grandest avenue of maples. All those cities claiming to be the Elm City, all those maple, oak, and walnut streets, and so many other street names and places, town slogans and nicknames. We would like to be remembered as a country of trees. The trees are pictured on the old postcards from before the Great War, the hand-colored one-penny cards that travelers sent home, the equivalent of today's phone call. Quite often they would send pictures of trees as if to say, yes, though I'm in New Haven, I'm still on Earth. The tall trees are there in a postcard from around 1905, noontime, Lancaster, Massachusetts. A farmer at his well with 3 plow horses, small figures in front of a row of great elms. A dirt road stretches away into the fields and on toward a hazy middle distance of more trees. There are tall elms over the bandstand in Keene, Central Square, circa 1920, on the Green in Taunton, Massachusetts, circa 1905, on Court Square in Springfield, Mass. Horse-drawn wagons pass by on the cobblestone streets, 1905. On the Boston Common, women in white dresses stroll under the trees of the Long Walk, circa 1910. Under the trees in Lewiston Park, Lewiston, Maine, men in their Sunday best sit reading the newspapers while children play nearby, circa 1910. On the Armory grounds in Springfield, Massachusetts, soldiers stand tall by the cannons. The trees stand taller. It is 1910. It is 1910, and Christ Church, Westerly, Rhode Island, stands wreathed in the bright green of new spring leaves. And spring blooms over Andover Street in Lowell, Massachusetts, over Main Street in Thomaston, Connecticut, and at Ward's Corner in West Haven, Connecticut. Need one go on? Once in our cities and towns, there were great trees to walk under. That's the end of the Cook Elm on West Street in Keene. That's about where the bank is today. There's like a one-story bank taking up an entire block. In the Memory House, we see the coming of modern times. This chapter that I'm going to read from a little bit is about the opening act of urban renewal at the close of the 1950s in Boston's West End. This chapter is titled Nothing But Remember. That's the West End in 1910. 1950, you can tell by the cars. End of the 50s, great hats, really great hats. That's the West End to your lower left, that kind of low area, 1955, 1959. See that again, 55, 59. When it was over, when the wrecking cranes and the bulldozers had been through, when the copper and lead had gone for scrap and the bricks for landfill, all that remained was streets and streetlights, a city as flat as a child's game board. And then most of those streets were wiped from the map, and two cities began to rise, the developer cities of luxury towers and the exiles' city of memory. It has been 60 years, and today two cities occupy the same land, the one of bricks and steel, and the other, a city of memory houses. One city is completed, and the other continues to build until today it is many cities. There's DiMaggio City. Joe Caruso says, I remember old man DiMaggio sitting on his chair at the corner of Green and Stanford Streets, nursing a bad leg and breathing gently through his bad lungs, mementos of fragments and mustard gas incurred during World War I. Years later, just before the West End was destroyed, the city erected a memento to the old man's only son, a boy killed on the beach at Anzio during World War II, Jimmy DiMaggio. The city named it James DiMaggio Square and then tore it down. There's the cool kid city. Richard Laurie remembers when he would skip school and wander the streets. He says, the West End was the best place I had ever been. The winding, dark brick streets seemed full of mystery and adventure without being mean and dangerous. Women called down from the small third-floor windows in languages I'd never heard before. There were the smells of a dozen old countries in the hallways and the streets. There's a city of childhood. Vincent Lopresti has a vivid memory of that city, a memory from the time he was called Sonny, and all the world he knew was the twisting streets of the West End. Lopresti remembers the cranes with wrecking balls coming up the street. He says, watching a house demolished, you knew the parents, grandparents, the kids, knew the families, knew the kitchens. It's like watching a person with cancer die. It's hopeless, knowing that there's nothing you can do, end quote. Nothing but remember. Today, in so many American cities, we have block after block of absences, and all variety of absences. We have the ruddy, muddy cinder block parking lots under the interstate. We have the tall corporate towers deserted by 6 p.m., but all lit up like hollow men. We have everywhere an absence of memory. Architects sometimes talk of building with context and continuity in mind. Religious leaders call it tradition. Social workers say it is a sense of community, but it is memory we have banished from our cities. In every building leveled and every neighborhood cleared, we say, we just don't want to hear about it anymore. We have made our bargain. We have speed and power, but no place. Travel, but no destination. Convenience, but no ease. We exile the past. Our approach is best characterized by an exhibit I saw at the Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. The Ford Museum is a warehouse of memory, a vast Costco of the past. 12 acres under one roof. 12 acres of cars, chairs, ovens, highboys, typewriters, combines, airplanes, steam engines, a 600-ton locomotive. If the hand of man and woman made it, Henry Ford collected it. That is something else. Henry Ford, as anyone can tell you, said history is bunk. But he was also among the first to seriously save American history. Magpie-like, he picked up chairs and buggies and houses from the New England countryside. Indoors, at the very heart of this 12-acre bazaar, exactly at the heart, said my guide one morning, is a little exhibit sampler. Under the heading, American Heroes, are the chair Lincoln was sitting in and the shawl he was wearing when he was shot, Washington's folding camp bed, and a test tube, canted to the side, stoppered up, and sealed in the display case. The Ford Museum is pretty funky. Edison's last breath, asked the label. Ford revered Edison and named his museum for him, the Edison Institute. Sitting across from a 900-ton steam engine, it seems so fragile. This test tube of breath is the essence of all museums, the motive behind all the crazy collections. The label says, cautiously, it is alleged it is alleged that Henry Ford asked Thomas A. Edison's son, Charles, to collect an exhaled breath from the lungs of Ford's dying hero and friend. This test tube was found at Ford's Fairlane mansion, along with Edison's hat and shoes, after Clara Ford's death in 1950. The dying breath of yesterday. We want to capture nothing less. But you can save the dying breath of yesterday. We need a preservation that is not stop time. So how do we vault over nostalgia and have the past really inform the present, guide us, and show us the graces we need to save? In the same acts twice, I look at preservation. Just what are we saving? I was trying to discover examples of a living restoration, trying to find renewal from the past. Whatever we are intent on saving, when a restoration succeeds, we rescue ourselves. The book's title, The Same Acts Twice, is taken from an old joke that I'm sure you've all heard. An old farmer says, I've had the same axe my whole life. I changed the handle 3 times and the axe twice. It's the same axe. The farmer's a fool, right? But wait, let's look at the most unchanged buildings in the world, the Ise Shrine in Japan. The Shinto shrine to the goddess of the sun is made of wood. The most unchanged structures in the world are the most rebuilt. The Ise Shrine has been rebuilt almost every 20 years since the year 690 AD. The outer, inner, and the 14 affiliated shrines began to be rebuilt for the 63rd time just last year. They are working on it now. To the Japanese, Ise is 1,300 years old. And let's look at a farmer's axe that we all own, the USS Constitution. The ship saw its last battle in 1815, but it is still commissioned on the Navy's active roster, part of our national defense. A duty crew sleeps on board each night. Saving a wooden ship is a job that's never finished. The Constitution, the ship, has been rebuilt and repaired in 1833, 1858, 1871, 1877, 1906, 1927 to 1930, 1953, 1963 to 1965, 1973, 1975, 1992 to 1995, and 2015 to 2017. Many years, the rebuilding of Issei and the Constitution match. There it is in 1927. Below deck and under sail in 1997. That's pretty gutsy. You don't want to be the commander who loses old Ironsides on your watch. I mean, just the paperwork alone would be horrifying. So, does that farmer have the same axe? Yes. His axe is a Shinto shrine and the USS Constitution. He possesses the same axe even more than a neighboring farmer who may have never repaired his own axe. To remake a thing correctly is to discover its essence. A tool has a double life. It exists in the physical sense, all metal and wood, and it lives in the heart and mind. Without these two lives, the tool dies. The farmer who restored his axe has a truest sense of that axe. He has a history of axe building in his hands. Museums are filled with cases of tools that no one knows how to use anymore. A repaired axe is a living tradition. In the same axe twice, we made quite a tour. I looked at preserved buildings, neighborhoods, ships, airplanes, engines, artifacts, farms, and entire ecosystems. I talked with restorers of sawmills, steam engines, antique gas engines, Wright brother airplanes, the USS Constitution, furniture, art, gravestones, paper, daguerreotypes, roadside signs. That's the American century right there. And houses. I visit more house museums than I care to admit. The Shakers, Elvis, Robert Frost, U.S. Grant, Charles Dickens, Teddy Roosevelt, Winston Churchill's war rooms, and in the former Yugoslavia, Joseph Broz Tito's place, which was a lot like Graceland. It had that hermeneutic quality to it, to name but a few. I visit preserved rural landscapes, towns such as Old Deerfield, and the industrial ruins of railroad yards and factories. I attend auction school, a stargazing convention, New Age rituals, hang gliding school, and a prehistoric fossil dig. I seek out the wise men and women I call Noahs, people who have some answers, not big plans and policies, but a touch for mending the world. I lived under the identity of an 18th century frontier settler on a farm where we tried, with each word spoken in each chore, to recreate that era. With a savvy driver, I recreated an old-time motor trip in a 1916 Cadillac on a road that had opened in 1914 and was much the same. I march and fight with the 6th Regiment New Hampshire Volunteer Infantry at the 135th anniversary of the reenactment of Antietam. So, what did I learn from doing all this? I'm going to fast forward to the end of the book, to the end of the same Acts twice, and read to you from the last part of the book some concluding restoration principles, pleas, and prayers. The future. Good restoration schools us in the graces of the old ways, freeing us to build anew. When we bring our loving attention to that which is old, it is not the past we are restoring, but the future. Good restoration saves the future. Mending. Good restoration is a two-way street. The object being mended, in turn, mends the worker. As important as a restored building may be, the real value lies in how this work restores and awakens us. When preservationists talk on about technique and tax codes and architectural history, they have often lost sight of why we save old things. They've lost touch with the animating spirit that called them to the old ways. We save these old things to save ourselves. Evanescence. On some winter days, snow passes right to vapor. Evanescence. All things worthy of restoration are so because we are seeing them as they pass. each in its own time, from years to eons. Houses, waterfalls, trees, the earth itself. Good restoration should contain its opposite, going away, softening, decay. Even the most meticulously preserved object, all glittering and pristine, should hint at its fate. Evanescence instead of epoxy essence. Can we restore the evanescence of a sunset to our lives? Loss. We must let go of some things, some beloved things, to allow the birth of the new, which at times will be shocking and awkward. Paradox. There are many photos of the early Chicago tall buildings that I admire. The best buildings are at once rude in their power and poised. In one photo, taken around 1880, there is a Studebaker showroom in the window where there are new wagons awaiting their horses. That's your classic Chicago tall building of the era. You can see those horse wagons right there in the window. Might be a little sharper there. There are places in which history changes. You can see the rift as clearly as the line of an advancing storm front. We could make weather maps of such rifts, a new idea or invention spilling with fury into a settled atmosphere. Let us honor the wagon in the skyscraper window, the horse and wagon pulling the Wright brothers airplane. A true American restoration would catch the flux and uncertainty of our lives. We dwell in contradictions. Nothing is ever saved. At a 17th century house restored by experts, they have put a little sandpaper grit into the clay of a repaired chimney, a microscopic calling card, evidence of the 20th century flashing back at the next generation of workers. You need to leave messages, say the restorers. Restoration is a legacy. The job isn't finished, it's handed off to the next caretakers. Rot is our inheritance. Rejoice. And renewal. Ours is an age of broken connections, the lost connections between heart and work, soul and politics, community and the self. Restoration is renewal, an effort to mend the world, or else it is not worth doing. Good restoration is a prayer, an offering, it's praise, attention paid. It revels in the glory and spirit of this life. So I continued exploring layers of time and history that we daily come across. In this book, The Bones of the Earth. And here, in this book, Dwelling in Possibility, Searching for the Soul of a New Shelter. That's a Frankie Brackley Tolman painting on the cover with a design by Henry James at Bound Publishing. Henry and Sarah are wonderful to work with. The ordinary is mysterious, and that's what that cover captures. A lot of short essays here, Summer Over Autumn, a small book of small town life. Many short essays about small town life, and no one anonymously dispatched a U-Haul to our house. The Habit of Turning the World Upside Down. This title is taken from something Alexis de Tocqueville wrote on his visit to America in the early 19th century. De Tocqueville said this: "It would seem that the habit of changing place, of turning things upside down, of cutting, of destroying, has become a necessity of Americans' existence." De Tocqueville, 1831. Chasing Eden, a book of seekers. Another fine Henry James cover. And this might be my favorite table of contents. Seeking God, seeking freedom, seeking peace. There's a good chunk of the American experience right there. Excuse me, single malt whiskey. Thanks, Sean, that's terrific. One of these chapters, one group of seekers, the White Mountain Painters, became the basis for the show I did with jazz composer Ben Cosgrove. Some of you may have caught us at Bass Hall, the Word Barn in Exeter, or at the Bank of New Hampshire stage in Concord and elsewhere. Or in the Emmy Award-winning film shown on PBS that was made by Elizabeth and Matthew Meyer Bolton. Do you have that home on your mantelpiece? It's great fun being on stage with Ben, and it's the only contracts that I've ever signed that specified load-in times. And thank you to our drama coach, Michelle Steckler, who's just helped us out tremendously. Time for another story. While editing and assembling this book, which some of you may know, the anthology about the region, I was up in the locked archival room at the Peterborough Library. I'd not been there for years, so I did what I usually do when I'm admitted to special collections. I roamed the shelves opening books. On some shelves, nearly every book. I looked at gazetteers, almanacs, census records, laws, town histories, old railroad annual reports, bits of local school law, Chamber of Commerce brochures. This is what I was doing when I came across 6 blue loose-leaf binders and 1 red binder on a low shelf to the right of the door. I flipped through the pages of the first binder. It was extraordinary. Each page is a collage of advertising, receipts, invoices, accounting, photos, and a short typed commentary. It's like looking through the drawers of an old roll-top desk. The title for these 425 pages is Good Nows, Good Now and Derbies, Pictures, Comments, Advertising by Clarence Derby, written 1989 to 1990. But as I read the book, I came to think of it as Clarence Derby's USA. So in this book, Turn and Jump, How Time and Place Fell Apart, I wrote about Derbies. In his retirement, sitting at his kitchen table, Clarence Derby, that's Carl to your left, Clarence to your right. Clarence Derby had assembled the book about his family's Peterborough department store, which I think probably most of you might remember. He had taken an old form, the Merchant's Daybook, the Diary of Commerce, and made it new. It's an uncanny history of the ordinary. In a few loose-leaf binders, Clarence has captured things in motion, all the things that people handled each day that define daily life and then vanished. It's like a sequence of 19th century motion study photographs, the horse galloping, the man leaping, the common goods of trade passed from hand to hand. For more than 100 years, it all flowed through Derby's. In this biography of commerce, this roman fleuve, Clarence has given commerce dignity. This is more than creative destruction, the economic upheaval that leaves us bewildered. Clarence Derby's USA is a documentary about the soul of a store. I set aside my initial research errand and sat there reading. Clarence starts in the cellar of the general store as a kid, packing potatoes and pumping out molasses into jugs, and transforms Derby's into a department store selling the first Philco TVs and locally made antennas, even though there was nothing on in 1948. Absolutely nothing. We see the entire American century move through one country store turned to five and dime turned department store. And we see Clarence in September 1929, ready to go back for his senior year at UNH, not go back because his father has a stroke. He puts his trunk aside. He says, I'll go back the next semester. October 29 comes, the stock market crashes. He never goes back. He never unpacks his trunk, and it's 11 years before he even takes a vacation. The Bailey building alone again. This Good Now in Derby is at the start of the 20th century. Here's another view, taking that eagle up top. That is something else. And you can't quite read it, but on the side it says, satisfactory shopping. That is the top praise. That is a big boast in the era. Satisfaction. There it is in its 1950s tail fin storefront. That's what the inside looked like, the old days. And this is one of the many sales. Clarence loved holding sales. They each had a different name, they had a different theme, and he'd go around and get special merchandise, and he just loved creating these filing basement kind of frenzies. This was social history. Back in college, I loved reading histories of overlooked people, histories that illuminated the ordinary, that told the story of how people really lived. Let's take a quick look in volume 3. This is Clarence's book, Clarence Binder, Volume 3, 1960 to 1969. It begins quietly. This is not the quick jump cut history of civil rights protests, campus sit-ins, and urban riots that has become the standard 60s documentary. At first look, the world at 30 Grove Street is a seamless whole, unshaken and expanding since the veterans returned and Clarence could sell any appliance he could get. In Peterborough, it seems to be the 1950s with the addition of color TV. Derby sale ads look the same as they did in the 1950s. The employees dressed the same. The interior photos seem closer to the early 1950s than to the Summer of Love or the Summer of Steal This Book. But as Volume 3 progresses, the tone changes slightly as new events seep in. Clarence writes, 2 kids caught stealing, gave them what for. I refuse credit to a person who became very mad. Mrs. R. mad about TV service charge. In Volume 3 of Clarence Derby's book, Clarence reveals what I should have suspected long ago. He was a devout diary keeper. Here he types out one of his entries, each day noted in a sentence or two. I recognize the form, the terse telegraphic daybook of labor. Here's November 1963. November 1st, someone attached EK's pay. He was a serviceman. Some kid stole a hat. November 6th, Manchester to buy Cinderella dresses with Marion Griswold. The 7th, went to Newport with Roy Robbins about a new manager. Derby's had stores in many other towns. 20th, Boston to Wellington Sears for special merchandise. 22nd, President Kennedy assassinated and closed store. 25th, Kennedy funeral, closed all day. A kid steals a hat. Clarence goes to Manchester to buy Cinderella dresses. The president is murdered. We're doing the small things, and then there's an earthquake. This is how most of us experience headline news. Where were you when, we ask each other? Where were you when Kennedy was shot? The lights went out on the East Coast. The shuttle exploded. The planes hit the towers. In the first collection of essays about the attacks of 9/11, the writers had to tell everyone where they were when they heard the news. I was here, I was standing there, I was doing this. I looked out of where I was, and this is what I saw. My breath, my hand, my love. And off on a wire and a wave comes the world and its news. There's always this comparison, our lives and the big event, as if 2 parallel universes had opened to each other at the moment of calamity. 2 clocks are revealed to be ticking side by side, the clock of the empire and the clock of our lives, borne along on the current. I was living my day. I was on my way to Manchester to buy a Cinderella dress. I was once briefly involved in a local Amnesty International chapter that was forming to petition governments to release political prisoners. We were packed full of ourselves. Our letters would free prisoners. We were working to right the world. Coming into the library where we met, we passed a room full of people, 30 or 40, happily playing bridge. Playing bridge while the world burned. We didn't have to take a vote to commend ourselves on our virtue. But why did we want to free the poor prisoners in other countries? Why? So they would be free to pass the time, make 1,000 meals for their families, sit in the pub, play bridge. So they would be free to buy their daughters Cinderella dresses. We live in the mundane. You can dismiss that daily life as trivial, or you can welcome it simple joys. Mundane, done again, thousands upon thousands of items flowed out of Derby's. Nail clippers, thumbtacks, underwear, toothpaste, shoes, Cinderella dresses. Each mundane, each also a devotion. Clarence Derby knew this. He was a curator of this kinetic museum. He looked after his customers, his neighbors, by procuring the best goods he could find. Clarence said, We had a subconscious feeling of the way Peterborough wanted the store to be managed. We gave our best to do this always. And look at this list of Derby's employees. Look how many years. Incredible. I mean, 20 years, 15 years, 30 years. When you went to Derby's, people tell me, of course you went to get whatever you were after, but you had a little visit with all these people because you knew them forever. Here they are lined up outside the store. It's just a different clock, a different time, a different clock. Working at Derby's, they bought a house, put shoes and braces on kids, and sent some of those kids to college just by working at a small department store. One last story, and this one takes place far from here, but it has an important local connection. The person in the story is too modest and may not like this, but she'll just have to bear with me. 18 months after Hurricane Katrina, I went to New Orleans and joined up with Habitat for Humanity, hammering away at a house in the 9th Ward, up in the rafters, becoming a specialist in nailing in the Simpson hurricane strap. I tap, 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 pause, and look out on miles of destruction. Then I put the next nail in and look out on miles of destruction. It just seemed impossible. Here we are working on this house, all these volunteers. It's your punch list. Someone sending prayers. And then I drove along the Gulf Coast, past ruined, crushed motels and smashed houses. There's just miles of this stuff. And long after the New Orleans jazz station was drowned out by a fire and brimstone preacher, which was mesmerizing, I arrived in Pascagoula, Mississippi to visit someone many of you may know, Annie Card. Hey, what happened? Sorry, there we go. Very tricky, Annie. Annie was running a relief agency that she had created with someone else called Mississippi Home Again. Here are a couple of her Amish volunteers moving a refrigerator for someone. Here they were up on the roof. The guy in the background from when I visited seemed to be a mainstay of Miss Annie's legion of duffers, who were the retired men who would just show up and start hammering and sawing away. Here they are finishing this sweet little house here. And this is Mally Hall, age 10, showing Miss Annie sitting on the roof of her house. That's her roof after Katrina, showing Miss Annie how her and her father got out of the roof and got out when the water was rising and rising and rising. The smile she has is typical of just almost every Annie Card picture I've ever seen. She just has this habit, this manner of putting people at ease. I wrote about this in Dwelling in Possibility, and this is a chapter titled The Storm After the Storm, a few days in April, a year and a half after Hurricane Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina hit Pascagoula, Mississippi, 3 waves raced in. The first was a 20-foot-tall storm surge, a wall of water 2 stories tall, driven by winds of 145 miles an hour. The waves washed 13 miles inland, flooding more than 90% of the small city. Along Beach Boulevard, when the waves receded, they took with them houses that had stood through Audrey, through Camille, through all the hurricanes by which people here mark time, hurricanes by which children mark birthdays. I was born after Frederick, a child will tell you. Along the beachfront are steps and pillars, cement slabs, no houses. They weren't leveled by a big wrecking cranes and carted off. They were just here and gone. I'm visiting Annie Card, professional photographer, who dropped everything to volunteer with the Red Cross right after the hurricane. When she saw that more needed to be done, she and a friend sent up a relief agency, Mississippi Home Again. They handed out appliances, hot water heaters, beds, swift and direct help. And now, a year and a half after the storm, Miss Annie, as people there call her, is still here, working to repair and rebuild 100 homes in 100 days in a poor Pascagoula neighborhood. She's showing me Beach Boulevard, where the town's grandest houses had stood. We get out of the car and walk up a rise to some front steps, and that is all that is visible at first, the steps and the old trees. A closer view reveals a small field of wreckage, a brick pile that used to be a chimney, stubby piers that had married the house to the earth, and the back steps. And there underfoot are bits of the former life, a corner of a marble tabletop, smashed pieces of good china, a delicate pattern of gold and pink and white, a rusted flashlight, a boot scraper for the doorstep made of horseshoes for good luck, shards of colored glass, a garden hose still wound up on its plastic dolly standing next to a spigot from the remaining tangle of water pipes, and an intact cookie jar that says, after-school cookies. The cookie jar is in the shape of a house. Only the roof lid is missing. I take in the intimate scale of this destruction. A storm that is hundreds of miles across may smash one teacup and leave another behind. This was personal. All morning I'd driven past ruins along the Gulf Coast, but I had seen them only at a huge scale. Hundreds of crushed motel rooms, concrete and mattresses spilling out like a waterfall, the footprints of vanished stores, houses, and gas stations with the telltale pipes marking the end of now-gone gas pump islands. I was inadvertently compiling a field guide of the lost. But this is the most poignant Katrina monument I have seen. On the back steps is a display, a broken flea market, pieces of cut glass bowls and dishes, an elegant glass, possibly for some kind of after-dinner drink, and little bits of blue glass, a rusted and twisted coping saw. This is an altar to the vanished domestic life. After Katrina, Annie tells me, she would see people picking through the ruins of their houses, setting pieces aside. Whatever little they found, they left. They were living in a FEMA trailer or living with their relatives. They had no room for any of it, they said. Maybe it wasn't what they had hoped to find. They had hoped to find a way back to the day before the wind and the waves hit. Taking a piece of china or a soak photo back to your trailer could be a bitter souvenir. It's what we all fear. The forces of the earth, wind and water and fire, and the ground itself bursting open, coming down upon our family, our doorstep. A house is a small boat. A wall is the thinnest of envelopes, no matter how well built. We know that we will vanish, that everything we have and hold will turn to dust, but we don't want to believe that. And we certainly don't want to see it all go in one shake of the earth or one wave. I look out on the Gulf just for relief at first. The view from under the old trees to the silver-toned water is bewitching. I look down again around the foundation. Someone has mowed this lawn. Someone is tending this ruin. Oh, yeah, says Annie. She came by here once, a few foundations down, and there was a man trimming the weeds away from his foundation slab. His house is now about 3 inches tall. When I first got here, she says, if I had seen that, I would have thought that he was crazy. With all that needs doing, why do that? But she understands now that you do what you can to restart your life. In another neighborhood, she was cruising with other Red Cross workers to see who needed help. Among the vacant, storm-racked houses, one was in pretty good shape, and a man stood outside watering the lawn. No need to talk to that man, said her fellow workers. No, wait, she said. Annie went over and talked with the man. He was impeccably dressed, but the inside of his house was gutted. It was down to the studs. Each night he slept on a reclining chair. It was about all that he had. He needed help. You can't tell from the outside, Annie says. The houses may be empty, the people suffering, but the roses are in bloom. She tells me about a police officer, dressed in his uniform every day for work, while at home his family slept on the floor of their gutted house. He was too proud to ask for help. And she tells me about a minister, dressed in a neat shirt and pants, working to help his congregation. He would never let on that these were his only decent clothes, or that his house was destroyed. As in life, as in the aftermath of the storm, we can't tell from the outside. This is the storm after the storm. After all those photos of trees bending in the wind, of houses adrift, of people stranded on roofs or escaping in canoes and boats in the street, after the evacuation and the Red Cross rolling around handing out hot meals, after the storm itself has passed and the sun comes out, there are other storms. But these may be invisible. There are private torments as people struggle to hold on to jobs and marriages, as they struggle with the feeling that they have failed their family. The storm after the storm requires its own kind of relief effort. It takes a different approach. It takes someone like Miss Annie. So, although I never planned it, I'm still doing what I did my first night in New Hampshire. Walking around, looking at this place, talking to people, and puzzling over and enjoying this craggy corner of New England. Still learning to be a tourist of the near at hand, admitting that our home place is blessed, strange, surprising, and ordinary. Thank you. This is to remind me to tell you that, well, you can buy books, The Toadstool's here, you can get them from the library, but leave a comment in Bezos land at Amazon. Doesn't that look like Jeff Bezos? And we just got these back from the printer. They're small little pocket, sort of a sampling of my books. Take it with you, keep it in your pocket. Read it at the bagel mill when you're waiting for your car, leave it behind. If a Christian group comes to your house, hand you a watchtower, hand them one of these.
So we do have time for one or two quick questions. If you just repeat the question, you can pick who you want. If there's a question.
Oh, that's good. I can pick who I want.
You got to plant in there.
No, I actually did not plant the question, although I was tempted. Anyone? No? No one? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
In your presentation is just wonderful. And it brought a thought to me. I visited Hiroshima and I saw the remnant of the town hall that's preserved. So here's a ruin that's preserved to remind us of what happens. It's not being rebuilt.
Yes.
And then I also was in India and I saw the Beatles ashram in Rishikesh, which is a ruin that was a place where they studied yoga with Maharishi Mahesh.
Yeah.
And now nature is taking over it and it's falling apart, but both places have their beauty. And I was just wondering if you have some comments about leaving things rather than restoring them as far as our memories go.
Okay, the question.
We need to repeat it it's being filmed, and his talk, Howard's talk will be available on our website in about a week or so. So if you can repeat the question so it goes to the video, that'd be great.
So the question is, what about ruins? The gentleman had gone to Hiroshima and seen the ruins that they had preserved, and then been at the Beatles ashram, which is now a ruin. And should they be left as ruins? What about leaving things alone? Ruins are very powerful, but every ruin you see is an artifact because people are choosing at what stage to arrest it and how to restore it. I was in Wales walking on this long distance path and I was above Tintern Abbey, that famous poem, and that's a very tidy ruin because they keep it at a certain way. And there's all these little school children writing poems about Tintern Abbey. So ruins definitely have a role. Is there another question? I also like Ringo's comment about going to India. They asked him, what'd you think of India? I didn't like it. That was all he said. Don't like it.
You want to, David's going to sew it up for us.
Okay, we're done.
No more questions? Howard, thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
A small token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
On behalf of the board of the Jaffrey Civic Center, a lot goes into putting these events together, and I'd like to take a small moment to thank Sean, who does a great job developing the introductions and so forth, and also John Duval and my wife Nancy, they do a wonderful job. Jean does a great deal more than preparing for our after party. Karen and Laura, who run this place day to day. Megan, our production person, and Sean, and Howard Mansfield. And also, I would like to say, if you have a chance while you're still here, feel free to walk around. This is a members exhibit in here right now. Upstairs is the New Hampshire Center of Photographic Arts. And in the showcases out here are some interesting bits from the Historical Society. One in particular, they're all really interesting, so have a chance to look at them. And please join us in the reception afterwards, and you can talk to Howard and ask him some additional questions if you were a little afraid to ask in public.
Buy books from the toadstool.
Yes.
To actually get here?